Hi, I'm Dan with Family White TV, and this is part one of Home Theater for the Masses, where I'm going to be talking about the anchor of a home theater system, which is ironically usually mounted on the ceiling, and of course I'm talking about the projector. Now, I'm not going to be telling you which projector to buy in various price brackets or anything like that. What I'm going to be telling you is about the features of a projector, what you might want to be looking for, why those features may or may not be important to you, and this is going to help to guide you in your decision in buying exactly the right projector for your situation. So the first thing to consider about projectors is, of course, the projector's resolution. And this is something that you want to be careful on because there are some bargain basement projectors being sold on Amazon where in the title it says 1080p, which is full HD. But you have to look into the specifications of the projector. You want to look for its native resolution. The native resolution of this projector, which in the banner says 1080p, is actually 800 by 460. That is not high definition. What's going to happen is when you get this projector and you display a 1080 signal on it, it's going to down convert that 1080 signal down to the panel's native resolution, and your resulting image is going to look more like this. So pay attention to the native resolution of the projector because a lot of projectors will accept a signal higher than its native resolution, but it's going to project it at its native resolution. There's no way around that. So 1080p projectors started around, I'd say $600 for the least expensive one that you'd want to get. Now up from there you can get 4K projectors, and they're actually not as expensive as you might think. Starting around $2,000 you can get a true 4K native projector. Now these $2,000 4K projectors are going to be a little bit slim on features, and that's what we're going to talk about next, is what features you might be looking for. In order to achieve a $2,000 price point with a 4K projector, they had to skimp on a lot of the higher end features that might be important to you. Now, next important thing you're going to want to think about for projectors is how much brightness it has, or how many lumens it puts out. Now, you don't want to just get the brightest possible projector you can get, because a lot of super bright projectors, light cannons, they're conference room projectors, they're business projectors, and what that's going to do is they're going to put out a lot of light so that you can see it in a room with lights on, but you're going to be sacrificing contrast in order to do that. So your picture, while it'll be really bright, may not look as good as it could if you didn't get a projector that was super bright. Some considerations you'll want to think about in deciding how bright of a projector you'll need is, of course, screen size, and also how much ambient light is going to be in the room when you're watching. So for screen size, the larger the screen you're going to have, the brighter the projector you're going to need in order to illuminate that screen. Now there's some calculators we can use, and I'll be showing you this a little bit later on in the video, but that's something to keep in the back of your mind is how big, do you want a 100-inch screen? Do you want a 130-inch screen? Do you want 150 or something even larger? The larger screen is going to require a brighter projector. Also, something to consider is how you're going to be viewing it. Are you going to be viewing it in a room that's always darked out? Are you going to be viewing it in a room that's going to have ambient light? Perhaps you want to watch sports on your projector and you want to have people over and you don't want to watch it inside a bat cave. You want to have lights on. So that's going to affect how bright of a projector that you're going to need to buy. If you have a room that can be completely light controlled, you can close out the windows and you can completely black the room out, then you can definitely get away with a projector that's not as bright, and that might actually be preferred in a lot of cases. But if ambient light's going to be an issue, perhaps you just want to watch TV during the day also and you can't control the light going into the room, then a higher brightness projector is something you're going to want to consider. Now the next specification for projectors is a little bit tricky to get the straight answer on, and that is contrast. All the projector manufacturers for consumer projectors publish insane contrast ratio numbers. You'll see numbers like 100,000 to 1, or maybe 300,000 to 1, or 1,000,000 to 1. Well, there's two different ways of measuring contrast. One is on-off contrast, and the other is ANSI contrast. Now, the projector manufacturers are going to publish the on-off contrast number because that's easiest to get a really high number on. What on-off contrast is they'll project a completely white screen at maximum brightness, and they'll take a reading, and then they'll project a completely black screen, usually with a dynamic iris on if the projector is equipped with that, and they'll get a really low black reading. And what that does is it gives them a really high contrast ratio number. But there's another method for measuring contrast called ANSI contrast, or American National Standards Institute. What the ANSI contrast does is it projects a checkerboard pattern of white blocks and black blocks. And what they'll do there is they'll measure the brightness of the white blocks and the blackness of the black blocks. And because of this, the projector can't really use any tricks or anything like that in order to adjust its contrast. And so this is going to give you a much more accurate contrast ratio for just normal video viewing. Now this is the contrast number that matters most, and it's going to be really hard to find because projector manufacturers don't publish this number. There are a few like ultra high-end projector manufacturers that do publish the number, but that's because they're selling to professionals that know what they're doing. But for the consumer level projectors, the marketing department has taken over and they'll publish the number that makes the projector looks amazing. So in order to find the lower ANSI contrast number, you're going to need to look at projector review websites that actually get the projector, they're independent, and they measure the ANSI contrast and publish that. Usually ANSI contrast for a projector is going to be less than 2000 to 1. But if you have a projector that has 2000 to 1 ANSI contrast, that is a really good projector. What a projector with high ANSI contrast is going to be able to do is display an image that has bright whites and dark blacks on it at the same time. An example of where you might encounter this is if you're watching a movie like Star Wars, which I've heard might be a little bit popular. You'll have like a bright planet on a black star field. Well, that can be tricky for a projector to display at the same time. So a projector with good ANSI contrast, your star field is going to look nice and black, your planet's going to look nice and bright. But with a projector that doesn't have good ANSI contrast, that's using iris to do some tricks to get the higher marketing number, well, then your star field might actually appear like a dark gray, or the planet might not be as bright as it needs to be, depending on what the projector thinks it needs to be putting out there. So speaking of iris, I mentioned dynamic iris a couple times, and this is something that you may or may not want to use, and not all projectors have this. What a dynamic iris is it is a iris inside the projector in the light path, where when the scene is mostly dark and you want to get the black level detail, the iris is going to close down so that not as much light goes out. And when you have a bright scene where it requires high brightness, the iris is going to open up and let a lot more light through. The issue with that is when the iris is closed down so that it's not letting a lot of light through, so you get your dark level details. If you have something bright in the image, it won't pop as much as it should. And conversely, if the iris is opened up and you have a portion of the image that is dark, then you're going to lose a lot of those shadow details in there that you wouldn't lose if the iris was closed down. So some projectors have better implementations of dynamic iris than others, and that's where you're going to want to consult a review on the projector you're interested in. Now for me personally, I would just I don't care too much about dynamic iris. I'd probably just set it to manual, because there are occasions where a dynamic iris can present artifacts on the screen. One specific example I heard of is in the movie 2001: Space Odyssey, where the camera pans, you have the Earth in the foreground, and it's taking up most of the picture. So in that case, the iris is going to be opened up so that you have a nice, bright picture there. But as it pans over towards the star field, what happens is when the iris is opened up, the star field kind of appears maybe a darkish gray, and as it pans over and that iris closed down, the star field will darken up, but then the planet is going to, I think it would brighten. But basically, as it would make that pan, you would see the iris in operation, and that's something that can cause some distracting artifacts in those specific kind of scenarios. Now, another feature projectors are going to have is focus and zoom. All projectors will have focus. Most is going to have zoom. But you're going to want to pay attention to the zoom number, because that's going to affect how far away you can mount your projector from your screen. And this is where you're going to want to consult a throw distance calculator. Now, a website that has a good projector calculator is projectorcentral.com. This is the calculator here, and in this box you can choose which projector that you're looking at, and then you can play around with zoom settings and how far away the projector is, and it will tell you how large the screen can be, how much brightness you're going to be getting off the screen, and that way you can make sure that the projector you're interested in is going to work for the room that you're going to want to put it in, for the size screen that you're going to want to use. Now, another feature that some of the nicer projectors are going to have is a feature called lens shift. What lens shift will do is it will move the entire image up, down, left, and right without introducing pin cushioning. And what pin cushion is when the top of a image looks larger than the bottom, or either way, depending on how the projector is mounted. What this does for you is it gives you a nice square image, and it gives you some wiggle room to where you can move the image up and down, left and right, so that if you don't get your installation exactly perfect, you can easily correct for that within the projector itself. Now, most projectors do have keystone correction, but you generally don't want to use that because you're losing some resolution on the panel and it can cause some video issues. But really, you want to try to get your projector mounted so that it projects a nice square image straight onto your screen. And if you need to do some adjustments with zoom and lens shift, then that's okay, and you're not going to really lose any detail doing that. Now, speaking of focus, zoom, and lens shift, nicer projectors are going to have motorized focus, zoom, and lens shift. Now, for a lot of you, this isn't going to matter. If you just get a projector screen that is a 16:9, the standard HD TV ratio, most people are just going to mount their projector. They're going to get the image adjusted once. They'll adjust their focus and zoom. They might adjust lens shift if the projector has it. And they'll just set it up like that, and it's pretty much you set it and forget it, because you never have to touch it ever again, because you're just projecting onto a 16:9 screen and you don't have to adjust the image size. Now, if you're like me and have a widescreen 2.35:1 movie screen, that's what's called a constant image height setup, then motorized zoom and lens shift is something you're going to want, and even lens memory. What a constant image height screen does is when you're watching a standard 16:9, standard HD TV formatted signal, you're going to have black bars on the sides of the screen. And in my instance, I have some panel masks that I put up when I'm watching something like that. But when you watch a widescreen movie like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, something like that, that is in that wider 2.35:1 aspect, on televisions and a lot of projector screens that are just 16:9, you're going to have black boxes or black bars on the top and bottom of the picture. With a constant image height setup, what you do is you zoom the projector out and you have to adjust the image a little bit, and that way your widescreen image will fill the entire screen and it gives you a much more enveloping, engaging experience. The problem with that is if you have a projector like the one I have now, which does not have powered zoom, what you have to do is you have to climb up there every time you want to watch a movie in a different aspect, and you got to adjust the projector manually, you got to do the lens shift and focus manually. And so it's just something it's kind of inconvenient to do. You got, especially if there's already people sitting up there and you forgot to set it up right, then you got to jump up there and set it up. Nicer projectors will have powered zoom, powered focus, and powered lens shift and lens memory. Now, not all of them with powered focus and zoom are going to have lens memory, but the nicer ones with lens memory, what it does is you set up the projector one way for watching 16:9 material, and you program that into a lens memory. And then you zoom it out and get it set up correctly for watching a widescreen movie, and then you put that into a lens memory. And there might even be some settings in between that for certain movies that aren't quite fully widescreen but are somewhat widescreen, you can set it up somewhere in between for that. And that's just a convenience feature, so that when you're switching between watching a standard formatted HD TV signal and a widescreen movie, you just hit a button on your remote and the projector just does it all automatically, and you don't have to jump up or do any sort of adjustments or anything like that. Now, another thing about projectors that you might want to think about is lenses. Now, if you're into digital photography and you have a camera with interchangeable lenses, you know that better glass is also expensive. Same way with projectors. Projectors have a lens which will project, which is going to, of course, send that image out onto your screen. And the less expensive projectors will usually have possibly even plastic lenses inside of them, which work okay. But with cheaper lenses, what you're going to see on a screen is while the center of the image might be in completely sharp focus, the edges of the screen are going to be a little bit out of focus. And also there's a thing called chromatic aberration, where at the edge of the screen, the lens is acting like a prism and you're getting a little bit of color fringing. And so the more expensive lenses, the more accurate glass lenses, maybe they have more elements, those more expensive lenses on the higher end projectors are going to give you an image where the center is in focus and where the edges are also focused, and there's not any chromatic aberration on the image. And like anything else, of course, there's lenses in between the really super nice lenses and the El Cheapo plastic lenses. Now, the other important feature of projectors is what kind of display technology it uses. There's 4 main display technologies for projectors. There's LCD or liquid crystal display, DLP or digital light processing, SXRD, silicon crystal reflective display, and there's LCoS or liquid crystal on silicon. Now I'm going to start with DLP. What DLP or digital light processing is there is a chip inside the projector that is called a digital micromirror device, and it has an array of super tiny mirrors, like one mirror for each pixel, that vibrates on and off in order to create the different levels of brightness. And inside this projector, there is a color wheel with red, green, and blue elements. And some higher-end projectors might have magenta and cyan, or they'll have different colors in there. But generally, red, green, and blue elements. And this color wheel will spin, and it's in front of the lamp, so that the light from the lamp gets filtered into red, green, and blue. Each one of these is sequentially shown off of the digital micromirror device, and it creates a red image, a green image, and a blue image on the screen. And these are shown in sequence very rapidly so that your eye generally doesn't notice it. Now, most DLP projectors have at least a 3 times color wheel, and what 3 times means is for every frame or every 60th of a second, it will show the whole red, green, and blue image 3 times in that 1/60th of a second. Nicer projectors are going to have 6x color wheels, which will show it 6 times. And what that does for you is there are some people who, with DLP projectors, they will notice the rainbow effect, or it might cause fatigue for them. And so for people who are sensitive to that, you'll want to go to one of the other display technologies. Now, me personally, I've always had DLP projectors, and I've had a lot of people over to my house, and I've never had any complaints of like headaches or migraines or anything like that. So it's not much of a worry unless you personally see it. Now, I could tell you how you can see this effect on your own, but that might be counterproductive. But I am able to see the rainbow effect if I dart my eyes around, but it's not something that bothers me. Now, the advantages of a DLP projector is that they have better ANSI contrast than LCD, and they also have perfect convergence. What convergence is on your pixel array, you want your red, green, and blue images to overlap perfectly. Well, on a DLP projector, since you have just one micromirror device, all 3 colors are always going to overlap on the screen. And so your panel convergence is always going to be perfect. Now, there are 3-chip DLP projectors, but those are generally really expensive. And by the time you're looking for a projector that expensive, you probably know what you're doing. But generally, if you're buying a DLP projector and it doesn't cost $10,000, then it's a single-chip DLP projector. So that brings me to LCD projectors. LCD or liquid crystal display projectors have the advantage of better color saturation. So your image is going to have a bit more vibrant colors than its DLP counterpart. The 2 disadvantages of LCD projectors is they generally tend to have a little bit less ANSI contrast, and also there's a possibility for convergence issues. What a convergence issue is if you have one of your color panels, or maybe 2 of your color panels that aren't exactly lined up with each other, on the screen, you might have a row of pixels that does not overlap. So you'll have a row of red pixels that does not overlap the blue pixels, or it could be the green panel that's off. Now, what this looks like here is if I have this image that's separated into 3 different colors, if I shift the red image just by 1 pixel, you might notice a little bit, but you don't notice it too much. But if I shift another channel, I'll say the green channel, off to the other side, well, it's going to become a little bit more noticeable. And if you have a projector that has a really bad convergence error, like I saw a business projector once, it was like 3 pixels off. Well, if I move it 3 pixels off, then the image really starts looking bad really quick. So convergence is one worry with the LCD projector, especially if you're moving it around a lot, like maybe you move a lot, then that could have an issue where it might get jarred and something might get misaligned. So that's something to think about. Now, higher end projectors do have ways to correct for that on the consumer level so that you don't have to send it into a repair facility to get it realigned. But generally, the less expensive LCD projectors aren't going to have that. So you're going to want to make sure that the place you buy from has a good return policy so that in case you happen to get a projector that the convergence is off too much for your liking, that they'll allow you to return that and get a different unit. Now, next up is SXRD and LCoS. Both of the technologies are fairly similar, Basically, it works like a digital micromirror device where light reflects off of it and out the projector. The difference with SXRD and LCoS is that they will have 3 of these reflective panels, one for red, one for green, and one for blue. Now, just like LCD, you can have convergence issues with this. Now, some of the higher end projectors, like I know for sure that the JVC projectors have a way that you can go into the settings and adjust the alignment of the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel so that you can get that perfect convergence. Now, some projectors won't have that, and this is something where you're just going to have to download the manual for the projector and see if it has this, if this feature is important to you. But the advantage of SXRD and LCoS is that they do have the better color saturation of LCD, but they also have really good contrast. So if you want the best of both worlds, then SXRD and LCoS is going to be the way you're going to go. But the SXRD and LCoS projectors tend to be more pricey than the DLP and LCD counterparts. Now, the next thing I'll talk about is the light engine of a projector, or what is producing the light. It used to be that you would have a high-intensity discharge lamp inside the projector, which sends out your light. Well, nowadays there are some newer projector technologies using LED lights or laser lights in order to produce your 3 different colors. Now, the thing is, the LED and lasers are more expensive than the lamp-based counterparts. They're coming down in price a little bit, but they are still more expensive. So the disadvantage of lamps is that they have about a 4,000 to 5,000 hour lifespan, depending on if you're running your projector in high brightness or low brightness mode. And also they dim over time. For a lot of people, they'll experience after just 300 hours on a lamp, if you were to keep track of your display and actually measure it, you'll notice that it dims over time. It's not enough that you're going to notice it quickly, but after 3 or 4 years of viewing, you're going to notice that your image just seems a little dimmer than you would prefer to have it. So what you do if your image dims down after 4,000 hours is you just buy a new lamp and install it into the projector. The problem is lamps do cost about $300 to $400 a piece. Now here I'll warn you, on Amazon and places there are lamps that are sold that are less than $100 for projectors, but these are garbage lamps. Don't get them. You want to get the OEM or the OEM equivalent lamps, and you want to buy from a reputable dealer. Do some research. A good projector lamp is going to cost at least $200 to $300. But these lamps are going to last generally as long as the OEM lamps, and they're not going to have issues. And it's just going to be you don't want to get a cheap lamp. Just don't do it. But of course, these lamps are expensive, and so that's something to consider. Now you can get a LED or laser powered projector. The problem is they are more expensive than lamp-based counterparts. So you have to look over the life of the machine over 20,000 hours. Is the less expensive lamp-based projector that performs just as well as a laser projector, is it going to cost less in the long run than the laser projector? So you might have to look at the projector and say, all right, well, if I buy this projector and 3 replacement lamps, is that going to be cheaper than buying a LED or laser powered projector? And so that's something to think about when you're doing that comparison shopping and when you're looking at what kind of projector you want. The main advantage, of course, of the LED and laser type projectors is not only do their light engines have a 20,000 hour lifespan, they generally do not dim nearly as quickly. They dim a little bit, but it's not nearly as bad as lamp-based projectors. So it's going to maintain the brightness of the projector over the lifespan of the projector. But the big disadvantage of that is after you get past 20,000 hours, the LEDs or lasers, they can't be replaced. You just have to buy a new projector. But really, let's talk about a little bit about projector lifespan and lamp lifespan. Like, let's say you have a projector that has a lamp rated for 4,000 hours. In order to watch 4,000 hours over the course of 2 years, you'd have to watch 5 hours a day, every day on your projector. Now, some people might do that if they're watching a lot of TV on their projector. Maybe they like to play video games a lot, and you can go through 4,000 hours in the course of 2 years. But if you're just watching a movie every night, or maybe a movie every other night, you're not using your projector on that consistent basis, then you could go 3 or 4 years on a single lamp. I've had projectors where I've gone 4 years or more on just one lamp before I've actually replaced the lamp. So you can get a lot of life out of a lamp on a projector. It's not as big a deal as some people might make it out to be. All right, another thing to think about with projectors is throw. And what throw is how far it projects what size image. So you'll have projectors are called long throw. What that means is you can have them mounted a really long ways away from your screen, and the image it throws is going to be appropriately sized for what you want. Whereas some projectors would be called short throw projectors. That means they can be close to the screen and still project a really big image. Now you want to be careful, because if you get a long throw projector in a short room, you might not be able to get your image up to the size you want. It might only project maybe a 60 or 70 inch image when you want 120. Or conversely, if you get a short throw projector, but you don't want to have it within a few feet of the screen, you want to have it at the back of the room, well then you're not going to be able to get the image small enough for the size screen that you want. So throw is something you're going to want to, again, the projectorcentral.com calculator is going to help you with this so that you can make sure that the projector you get is going to give you the image size you want at the location that you're actually going to need to mount it. Next up is noise that a projector produces. Now, a lot of business projectors, conference room projectors, they don't care about noise because you're not watching movies. It's not that big an issue, so they'll be louder. But home theater projectors tend to have better fans and better cooling inside of them, so that when you're watching a movie and you have that quiet scene come up, you don't have a vacuum cleaner mounted on your ceiling. So the better projectors are going to have better fans that are going to be quieter, and that's something you want to look. Sometimes they'll publish that, but also you might want to read reviews and see what the noise was like for that projector, depending on the kind of room you can put it in. Some people will actually do like the movie theater, where they'll have the projector mounted in another room, projecting through a hole or something like that, or there's hush boxes, but generally, if you get a decent projector, projector noise, fan noise isn't going to be an issue for you. But if you get a cheaper projector, then yeah, the fan noise may be an issue. Or if you live in high altitudes. If you live in high altitudes, then the projector fan has to run faster in order to move enough air to keep the projector cooled. So if you live in Colorado or another state where you're up in altitude, then that's something you're going to want to think about. Next is how well a projector upscales the image. Now, all projectors have a fixed panel resolution of usually either 1920 by 1080 lines for a full HD projector, or for a 4K projector, it's more like about 4000 by 2000 lines-ish. I don't know the exact number, but it's around there. Now, what your concern is, if you're watching a movie like on a HD projector, if you're watching a standard DVD, well, how well is that projector going to take that standard definition signal and upscale it to high definition? Also, projectors have other things they can use, like creative frame interpolation. Now, some people like that, some people don't. You'll want to look up on that, but better projectors will have modes where you can adjust that and get the look of the video you want. But lower end projectors are going to tend to have less of these options, less of these processing options, and they're not going to do as good a job upscaling a DVD to a 1080p or even a 4K image, whereas the higher end projectors are going to do better at upscaling those images. Now let's talk about the price of a projector, the bottom line. Really, the lowest I'd recommend spending for a projector is $600. That's going to be a projector, a nice starter projector. It's going to give you a good image. It's not going to be complete garbage, but that's going to be a good starting point. It's going to be a basic projector. It's going to lack a lot of these features I've talked about, but if you don't need those features, then that might be fine for you. From there, the prices go up. And I'd say for me personally, for the projector I think would be my end-all be-all projector, that would be about a $6,000 projector. And that's going to be a projector that's going to have good brightness, it's going to have great colors, it's going to have really awesome contrast, it's going to have the powered lens shift, zoom, lens memory. It's not going to be a loud projector, and it's going to have good upscaling features. It's basically like the best picture you can get before you kind of fall off the cliff. And what I mean by the cliff is there's the price versus performance ratio. I think once you get to around, I'll say $4,000 to $6,000, once you go up from there, you have to spend a lot more to get much more improvement in your picture quality. So while there are projectors out there that are $10,000, $20,000, or even more, you're spending a lot more to get a picture that's a little bit better. So for home theater screen sizes of around the 100 to 130, maybe 140 inch variety, a $4,000 to $6,000 projector is probably going to be the pinnacle of like the sweet spot of where you'd want to look for. And of course, you can get projectors less expensive, and it's going to depend on what the features you need. Maybe you don't need the lens shift, maybe you don't need the powered zoom and the lens memory, stuff like that. Maybe you can deal with a picture that doesn't have maybe as good a contrast. I mean, it's all up to you. And what you want to do is basically look at your budget, how much you want to spend, and kind of go from there and find out what the best projector you can get for your budget is. All right, so let's quickly go through an exercise of what my ideal projector is, and I'll explain why it's my ideal projector. So the projector I'd most like to get at this time for my theater is the JVC X790R. It sells for about $5,000-ish on Amazon. The MSRP is more like $6,000. But this is the projector I'd most want if I had to buy a projector today. What this projector offers me is it is an LCoS projector, so it has the good colors and the good contrast. But specifically, the JVC projectors are known to have really good black levels. Basically, when you're watching a dark scene, instead of the picture kind of appearing gray in the blackest blacks, JVCs are known to put out really deep black levels. They're also known for really excellent ANSI contrast. So you're going to have the nice brights on there and the dark and the shadow detail, and you're going to have it all at the same time on the image without having to use any sort of iris tricks. Now, the projector is called a faux K projector, or like fake 4K. It uses pixel shift, so it has a lower resolution panel and it shifts the pixels diagonally each time it shows a frame. From all the accounts I've read on this projector, if you're watching videos side by side with a native 4K projector, you really can't tell much of a difference. Now, if you're looking at spreadsheets or something like that, then the difference becomes more noticeable. But for me, in my theater, I've decided that the fake 4K of the JVC is fine for my needs. Now, someone has pointed out there is a Sony native 4K projector that performs nearly as well as the JVC. The reason I wouldn't get the Sony 4K in my personal situation is because the JVC has motorized lens zoom, focus, and shift, and it has lens memory, whereas the Sony projector does not have the lens memory option. So in my case, where I have that constant image height setup, I need to have a projector that has the lens memory option. Otherwise, I'm going to have to be jumping up and down all the time. And if I spend $5,000 on a projector, I want the projector to adjust the image for me. I don't want to have to jump up and down all the time. So that's why I choose the JVC projector over the Sony projector in my case. Now, in your case, if you're not going to run constant image height, then the Sony would be a better projector for you. But that's an example for you of needing to know what features you need in a projector. I need that lens memory, lens shift, and all that. So that kind of limits my choices down to a few projectors. Now there is the Epson has the LS10500. It's a laser projector that performs as well as the JVC projector, and it does have all those features, but it also costs about $2,000 or $3,000 more. So over the life of the projector, if I buy the JVC projector and several replacement lamps, I'm going to end up spending less still over the Epson projector. But hopefully by the time I'm ready to buy a projector, there will be a laser option that'll be 4K, and it'll have the awesome contrast, and it'll be within my budget range. Now, some great resources you can use for all things home theater. The best one, that if I could just have one resource, it would be the avsforum.com. That is a forum of home theater enthusiasts and also audio and sources and direct view televisions and projectors, all the way from the low end all the way up to the astronomically high end. But it's a resource where it's a huge community, and it's going to be a little bit of information overload at first, but you're going to find a lot of great information, not only on the stuff you can buy, but also there are DIY sections for if you want to build your own theater, if you want to build your own screen, build your own speakers. Lots of great information there. So AVS Forum is one. A good projector-specific website that I use a lot is projectorscentral.com. They have the projector calculator. They have an archive of a lot of projectors. They also keep lists of the top 10 home theater projectors in various price categories. So that's an excellent website that you can use. Another one I'll mention is audioholics.com. Not really projector-centric, but more about audio, but it's kind of a straightforward, no BS website that gives you the straight scoop on audio and technology and things like that. So they're a great website also. If you have any questions for me, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer them for you. And I hope this video was helpful for you. I'll be making more videos in the future here about screens, speakers, subwoofers, the room, acoustic treatments, and seating and sources and probably some other things I'll be thinking of. So if this was helpful for you and you want to see more, please like the video and subscribe, and I'll get some more videos out there as I can. And thanks you for watching.